Caitlin Clark missed her first game of the season on Wednesday night. Back soreness. The same back issues she's been dealing with since the season opener against Dallas. The same back problems that Stephanie White has been aware of for weeks. And the fever didn't put Clark on the injury report until 100 minutes before tip-off. When reporters pressed White about it after the game, she got defensive. She made excuses. She insisted the fever won't be fined for hiding Clark's injury status. But here's what White didn't address: why Caitlin Clark's back is sore in the first place. And the answer is simple. Stephanie White has been running Clark into the ground, overplaying her minutes, ignoring the warning signs. And now the face of the WNBA is injured because her coach refused to manage her workload properly. The Fever won without Clark, which only proves they didn't need to overwork her in the first place. Let me break down exactly what happened, why this is Stephanie White's fault, and why fans are absolutely furious about how this situation was handled. Let's start with Wednesday night. The Indiana Fever were set to face the Portland Fire at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. It was supposed to be another showcase for Caitlin Clark against one of the league's expansion teams. But 100 minutes before tip-off, the Fever announced that Clark would not play. Back soreness. The injury report was updated at the last possible moment, which immediately raised questions. Why wasn't Clark listed earlier? She didn't practice on Tuesday. The team knew something was wrong. So why did they wait until game day to officially rule her out? After the game, to which the Fever won 90-73, reporters asked Stephanie White those exact questions, and her answers were revealing. James Boyd from The Athletic pressed White on why Clark wasn't on the injury report despite missing Tuesday's practice. White's response was defensive. She said, "Not everybody that doesn't practice or gets a pro day is on the injury report. That happens all the time." And she wasn't listed on the injury report earlier.
Well, not everybody that doesn't practice or gets a pro day is on the injury report, so that happens all the time. And she wasn't listed on the injury report earlier because we expected her to play.
Because we expected her to play. Expected her to play. That's White's excuse. But here's the problem with that answer. If a player is dealing with an injury serious enough to keep them out of practice the day before a game, that player should be on the injury report. That's not a suggestion. That's a league rule designed to ensure transparency. And when Boyd asked White if she expected the Fever to be fined for not listing Clark earlier, White simply said, "No, no," as if the question itself was ridiculous. But it wasn't ridiculous. It was legitimate. Because the Fever absolutely violated the spirit of the injury reporting rules, even if White doesn't think they'll face consequences for it. If you want breakdowns like this on Caitlin Clark and everything happening in the WNBA, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Now let me show you why Stephanie White is responsible for Caitlin Clark's back injury. This back issue didn't come out of nowhere. Caitlin Clark has been dealing with back problems since the very first game of the season. In the opener against Dallas, Clark left the court twice to go back to the locker room. She needed her back adjusted by the team's medical staff. And after that game, when reporters asked her about it, Clark downplayed it. She said, "Just getting my back adjusted. It gets out of line pretty quickly, so just that. Just getting my back in place a little bit. But other than that, I feel great." Just getting her back in place. That was 3 weeks ago. And now, 3 weeks later, that same back issue has forced her to miss a game. So the question is obvious. If Caitlin Clark's back has been a problem since Game 1, why has Stephanie White been playing her so many minutes? Why has she been running Clark into the ground instead of managing her workload to prevent exactly this kind of injury? Let's talk about the minutes. In the season opener against Dallas, Stephanie White overplayed Clark. She admitted it was a mistake. She said she learned her lesson. But then what happened in the very next game that went to overtime against Washington? Clark played 37 minutes. 37. In a game that went 5 extra minutes. She was exhausted. She was visibly gassed, and they lost. White ran her into the ground again, despite saying she wouldn't. And even in the games Clark played well, the minutes kept piling up. Against Seattle, Clark played 23 minutes and looked great. But that was only because Aaliyah Boston was out and White had to adjust the rotation. The moment Boston came back, you can bet White would have gone right back to overplaying Clark. Because that's been her pattern all season. Play Clark as many minutes as possible. Ignore the warning signs. and hope nothing breaks. Well, something broke. Caitlin Clark's back couldn't handle the workload, and now she's sitting out a game. But here's the most frustrating part. The Fever didn't need to overwork Clark in the first place, because when she sat out against Portland, the Fever won. Easily, 90-73. Aaliyah Boston dominated with 24 points and 8 rebounds. Kelsey Mitchell added 21 points. Tyasha Harris stepped in at point guard and had 7 assists with 0 turnovers in 29 minutes. Lexi Hull scored 16 points. Raven Johnson contributed 9 off the bench. The Fever played well. They executed the game plan. They won by 17 points without Caitlin Clark, which raises an obvious question. If the Fever can win by 17 without Clark, why has Stephanie White been running her into the ground? Why couldn't White have given Clark more rest earlier in the season to prevent this injury? Why couldn't she have managed Clark's minutes better so her back didn't become a problem? The answer is that White prioritized winning games over protecting her star player's health. And now Clark is injured because of it. And let's talk about the way White handled this with the media. When reporters asked if Clark was injured or if there was something more to the back soreness, White's answer was vague and dismissive. She said, "Her back is sore. If there's anything more detailed than that, that's the training staff. That's not leadership. That's deflection." White didn't take responsibility for overworking Clark. She didn't acknowledge that maybe her coaching decisions contributed to this injury. She just passed the question off to the training staff and moved on.
Her back is sore. So if there's anything more detailed than that, that's the training staff.
But here's what makes this even more interesting. Despite being injured and unable to play, Caitlin Clark showed up to the game. She was on the bench, she was cheering for her teammates, she was engaged. And there's a video that went viral during the game showing Clark hyping up Aaliyah Boston after a big play. Clark was jumping up and down in front of Boston, clenching her fists in excitement. Then she sat down next to Boston, hugged her, exchanged some words, and tapped her on the head before they separated. It was a sweet moment. It showed Clark's leadership. It showed that even when she can't play, she's still the heart of this team. And fans noticed. One person on social media wrote, "Looks like somebody in a good mood to be there today, even with her back injury." Another said, "Someone looked happy on her day off." Clark wasn't sulking. She wasn't upset about missing the game. She was supporting her teammates. That's what great leaders do. But it also raises another question. If Clark's back is sore enough to keep her out of a game, should she have been sitting on a hard bench for 2 hours? Shouldn't the training staff have had her resting at home or in a more comfortable position? It's just another example of questionable decision-making by the Fever's coaching and medical staff. Now, let's talk about what comes next. The Fever play the Golden State Valkyries on Friday night at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. That's less than 48 hours after Clark sat out with back soreness. So the question is whether she'll be ready to play. And if she does play, will Stephanie White have learned her lesson? Will she manage Clark's minutes better? Or will she go right back to overplaying her and risking further injury? Because here's the reality. Caitlin Clark is the most important player in the WNBA. She's the reason ratings are up. She's the reason arenas are full. She's the reason the league is getting mainstream attention. And Stephanie White's coaching decisions are putting her health at risk. This isn't just about one missed game. This is about a pattern of overworking Clark, ignoring injury concerns, and prioritizing short-term wins over long-term health. Last season, Clark only played 13 games. Injuries derailed her entire second year. And Fever fans were hoping that this season would be different, that Clark would stay healthy, that the coaching staff would manage her workload better. But 3 weeks into the season, Clark is already dealing with back issues. She's already missed a game. And the warning signs were there from day one. Stephanie White just chose to ignore them. And that's why fans are furious. Not just because Clark missed a game, but because this injury was preventable. If White had managed Clark's minutes better from the start of the season, her back might not have become an issue. If White had taken the warning signs seriously after the Dallas game, maybe Clark wouldn't be sitting out now. But White didn't do any of that. She ran Clark into the ground. And now the face of the WNBA is injured. Caitlin Clark missed the Fever's game against Portland with back soreness, the same back issues she's been dealing with since the season opener. Stephanie White didn't list Clark on the injury report until 100 minutes before tip-off, even though she missed practice the day before. When reporters questioned White about it, she got defensive and insisted the Fever won't be fined. But White didn't address the real issue: why Clark's back is sore in the first place. And the answer is that White has been overworking her, playing her too many minutes, ignoring the warning signs. The Fever won without Clark, which proves they didn't need to run her into the ground. But White prioritized wins over Clark's health. And now the face of the WNBA is injured because her coach refused to manage her workload properly. Fans are furious. And they have every right to be, because this injury was preventable. And Stephanie White is responsible. What do you think? Is Stephanie White to blame for Caitlin Clark's back injury? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the latest on Caitlin Clark and everything happening in the WNBA. We'll see you in the next one.